And we're back. We are back. So this is a pretty good one. Thank you all for joining us again. I just want to remind anybody who's seeing us here on TikTok for the first time, we do archive the live show on both Rumble and YouTube. So you can feel free to check those out. We also have a Facebook page and an X page for sharing news articles, for, kind of a social commentary. We can all chat together. We can talk about things that are important to us. Maybe things we want to dive in a little bit more. One thing I noticed the other day when I was looking up the ruling for Louisiana v. Callais, it didn't matter if I used Grok, it didn't matter if I used ChatGPT, even Google's AI assistant. The result that it came back with was that the Supreme Court decision in the Louisiana redistricting case was going to allow for aggressive racial redistricting. And that was the conclusion that was drawn based off of the news articles, based off of the commentary. It's hard to say how these AIs are trained. They just kind of look at everything and then sort of draw a conclusion. That's how a language model works, right? It looks at the language being used. So when you have a misinformation blitz, it makes it so that those search queries, they come back factually incorrect. So I spent a lot of time digging into it. That's why I made a video breaking down the background of the case and then actually reading through the opinion that the Supreme Court ruled on that case. So that way it'd just be one easy, quick, concise video, easy to understand, easy to share. And well, here we are. I did a live yesterday, and I said that, what I thought was about to happen next, because across the country, because the Supreme Court ruled in Louisiana v. Callais that Section 2 of the Voters' Rights Act does not give a state the right to make districts apropos to race. And they said because of the 14th Amendment, that would not be allowed. And then they clarified Section 2 of the VRA does mean that there are certain requirements when making a district, but you cannot use that part. You cannot use Section 2 of the VRA to make a race district, because doing that, it necessarily means that you're holding one race to you're giving them a privilege over another, so you're de facto disenfranchising others based off of their race, and this is contrary to the 14th Amendment. I think we all, in our heart of hearts, have an understanding of that whole content of their character thing. We all remember that from public school. We all watched the black and white speech. And, because of this, now we see this whole media blitz. What's going to happen with affirmative action? You mean that we can't just give people privileges based off the color of their skin anymore? But that's what we've been doing for the last, 20 years, and it really, in some ways even longer than that. But sometime during the Obama era, that scale kind of shifted a little bit. And talking about it, if you were on Freakonomics, that now that's considered a right-wing hate book or something. We've come a long way. We've somehow both progressed and regressed in this factor. It kind of in both ways, because there's also no middle ground anymore. It seems like you're basically when you say you're not allowed to talk about race, it's that you just have to buy into the affirmative action. Section 2 allows for racial gerrymandering. You basically get to choose either that we need, that the equality actually means equity, and you have to give people special privileges if you want to make it equal. And then the other end of that spectrum, it seems like there's no in between. You just go straight to Nick Fuentes. There's really no way to talk about this in any kind of reasonable manner, because of the culture that we have lived in for about 20 years now. And that's really what it comes down to, that either you reject it totally in a very regressive type of way, or you just swallow it whole. You don't even bother to chew it or think about it for a moment. You don't think about the fact that, our country is about 14% black. According to census data, about our country in a general population sense is about 14% black. About 14% of eligible voters are black. And in the House of Representatives, about 14% of the representatives are black. So it kind of, under the current rubric, It actually it kind of reaches that sort of equitable outcome standard. And so there's this temptation, right? That now, oh, well, Section 2 of the VRA is out. That means Republicans are going to redistrict all through the South. And there's not going to be a single black majority district all through, Mississippi, which is 38% black. And so this kind of goes to that raw democracy thing. Like what? Like in fact, the exact same argument was being made about Virginia 30 seconds ago by the exact same people, and on both sides. On both sides, literally. That in Virginia, okay, well, you're 49% Republican, and now the map's going to be, 10-1? How is that fair? How is that fair? And then you get the same power politics players saying, well, you don't have a majority, we can draw the districts, we have a right to do that. And to be honest, I mean, technically, that is kind of what the Section 2 argument, the ruling, the opinion that SCOTUS gave, that was kind of the conclusion, wasn't it? They did kind of say, like, you are allowed to gerrymander a district based off of representation or based off of political affiliation. They did explicitly say that is allowed. Now, to the current Virginia lawsuit holding up Virginia redistricting is about process errors. It's not about representation. It's not about equitable representation. It is literally about constitutional process errors and bringing that amendment to a public vote. And in fact, so far in the Supreme Court of Virginia, that was expressly stated by the Virginia Supreme Court. That is what the justice had said when he was doing a counter argument against the plaintiffs, against the Republicans in Virginia. And he said, well, I mean, it was a bare majority. It was a 51% to 49% vote. And the justice, he stops the plaintiff. He kind of almost, his questioning against the defense, it indicated he was kind of favorable to the Republicans, but he does a full stop on the plaintiff Republicans. And he says, hey, wait a minute. It doesn't matter if you win by 1 vote or if you win by 20%. If you win the vote, that winning's winning. Doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. That's what they said in Fast and Furious, right? So we're in this interesting thing because if you apply that same standard to race, you just shrug your shoulders and you say, well, there's only, there's 19 black majority cities in the country. So so what do you do, right? Because, okay, so if black Americans only make up 14% of the population, then how are you ever going to get even one? If you just say, oh, we can use an algorithm and we'll just do it by population and the demographics will match and so that way it's all equitable and fair. Well, then you're left in a situation where probably there's not even one black representative. So how is that going to work? Right? It's kind of confusing. So that's not really the solution. All these people that are like, oh, well, we'll just use an algorithm and we'll base the parameter. It'll just be reflective of the population and then each one votes. Well, you've just used AI to just reinvent raw democracy out of a republic. That kind of seems worse. That almost definitely seems worse. And so then you try again. Well, what do we do? Well, here you go. Here's an idea. Maybe we'll do this wild, crazy thing, right? Because I talk about this on the show all the time. Anytime anybody claims voter fraud, I don't know anybody who voted for Trump. He might have cheated. Why? I don't know anybody who voted for her. How did she get that many votes? And there was probably fraud, and they just didn't fraud enough. And it's like, dude, people sort themselves into communities of like-minded people. Imagine that you and your neighbor actually have a lot in common. That is the case for almost everyone. Towns, streets, communities, neighborhoods. People have a tendency to live around people who kind of look like them, or they work at similar places, or maybe even in the same place, depending on what kind of community or town you live in. People sort themselves into political pockets. They sort themselves, if you live in a city, you always hear this from Republicans who live in big cities. They always have this idea that They're just so different from everyone, and everything ought to be better. It's like, dude, there's a whole wide countryside full of people just like you, and you're inside the city getting angry that these people are governing in a way that you don't like. Well, maybe it's just not the place for you. It's no surprise when people sort themselves in this way. So that being said, you could algorithmically create it. You could algorithmically create it around certain geographical structures, around literal neighborhoods, literal communities, an actual district for an actual city, as opposed to slicing the city up like they're in the middle of a pizza. It is possible. Just imagine if we did things in a way that made sense instead of this crazy partisan dogfight. And anyway, not to digress from my main point here, the leading story is that Louisiana did something that I literally predicted the minute that the ruling came out. They can't proceed with their maps anymore. And so that Louisiana case started it started with one black majority district, because that was, at the time, that was the interpretation of Section 2 of the Voters' Rights Act. They needed a black majority district. But because Louisiana is about 30% black, then a group in the state sued the state and said, you didn't give us enough representation. We make up 30% of the state, but with only one district that we don't really have equitable representation. They said, okay, we'll redraw the map. We'll add a second district apropos to race. And then the white people inside of that second district that was expressly made for the purposes of racial representation, then they sued that they were being disenfranchised, and now you can't use the new maps. You literally can't. You can't proceed with the election. Your map was just struck down by the Supreme Court explicitly. And I was getting into it with this guy. I say, that they're like, he's like, well, they'll just proceed with the old maps. I said, you really think so? Do you really think they're going to proceed with the old maps? Well, they won't have time to redraw maps. You don't think that they would delay their primaries? This is unprecedented. There are all kinds of senators, there are all kinds of House of Representatives members, Congress people that are inside of districts right now. And 70 of those districts were made expressly to satisfy the racial requirement of Section 2 of the VRA. And the Supreme Court just ruled that a constitutional violation, which means people in every single one of these districts have the ability to sue their state government for a violation of their constitutional rights to representation. Do you think that that's just going to stand? Do you think that they're not going to be able to proceed for 1 second? You might see districts that weren't supposed to get another election for 2 more years might get thrown into this year's primary. Do you understand? We are currently now in a constitutional crisis where there are representatives in districts all over the country that are inside of districts that are effectively defunct because of this Supreme Court ruling. So Louisiana declared that they were going to delay their primaries. That May 16th, we're going to have to delay. Now we got to redraw this map. And that's just Louisiana. That was only one other district. The second district got shut down. They're probably going to shut down the first one. But what do you think's going to happen? Oh, there's not enough time for Tennessee to redraw their maps. No, I promise you, they will make time. They will make time. They'll say, nope, we have to do a rush primary. We're going to wrong foot these people now. They are going to do it. There's going to be a primaries blitz across the country of redrawing maps. I know Virginia, I think your deadline to file, I think, is in May, and then the primaries in June. I'm probably getting that wrong. I'm pretty sure I got that right. Anyway, so with that being the case, you think that like a lot of states are, similar, like right now is your filing deadline. Like if you don't have your signatures and you don't have your paperwork, then you're not running in the primaries. It's like pretty much right now. I'm telling you, there are plenty of states will be happy to make time to redistrict before this year's midterms. I see Ham's joined my chat here. Good to see you, buddy. But no, so we're in a constitutional crisis that we're going to see this happen all over. And I mean, within the first hour, within 1 hour, Florida passed their new maps. Within 24 hours, Louisiana put their primary on pause specifically so that they could redraw their maps. And I already went, already I went through these. There's like 14 districts. It's like 6 of them in Georgia, a bunch of them in North Carolina, Texas, Ohio, Alabama, Tennessee. It's going down, dude. It's going down. It's going to be nuts. It is going to be absolutely nuts. So we're going to have a hard time keeping up with everything this year. I can guarantee it. And like I said, you hate to be, oh, well, no, they're the real hypocrites. No, they're the real racists. I mean, it's really boring. It is incredibly boring. And, I don't care. I don't care anymore. The whole hypocrisy thing is presuming honesty. For somebody to be a hypocrite, you kind of have to presume that they're at least trying to be honest with themselves, because you're accusing them of having a double standard, which is assuming that they're being honest with you about what the standard is. But you see, that's not really how it works, because it might just be that the standard is this rule only applies to you and not to me or people that I like. And this is the thing about kind of morality in general, right? I wanted to do a video about this, but we've been pretty good at sticking to the politics, so I just don't want to wax philosophical about morals all the time. People make this mistake when they deal with salespeople, when they deal with coworkers, when they have somebody they think of as a friend. This happens a lot. People think that the moral standard, that what is moral, that the way that others treat them, they treat others, they think that their moral standard applies to them. But that's not true. Their moral standard applies to them and affects how they treat you. You see, it's a difference, right? Is that, oh, well, my moral standard, the way I would treat you is how you would treat me, and vice versa, the golden rule. That's not true. Because they get a say in that process too. When you think of somebody as a friend and you think of how you would treat a friend and how you're presuming how that person would treat you, informed of that, but they might have an entirely different standard. And in fact, in a lot of ways, you can't even hold it against them. People's morality and these kinds of things, that's based off of a lot of factors. It could be your upbringing, your community, or, your religion, or in some ways, race plays a part of that. But the fact of the matter is, this is just one small factor. Somebody's religion or race or politics is only partially, it is a small factor in a whole mosaic of factors that make up these things. So when you see people that are hyper-focused, they just have a myopic focus, oh, well, they, because of their religion or because of their race, they're this way or that way, or they think this or that. This clouds your judgment. This clouds your ability to predict somebody else's morality. It clouds your ability. If you don't understand their moral framework, you're going to start having a difficult time predicting what they're doing, what they're going to do next. You're going to have a hard time analyzing why they're doing what they're doing and having a hard time predicting what happens next. This is important. It's an important skill when you to truly put yourself in someone else's shoes. And that is a difficult thing, not to assume that if I were to do that, I would do that thing for these reasons, so that's probably why they're doing it. That is incorrect. That is incorrect. You have to understand from their perspective is that this might just be something that's allowed. You know what I mean? Or something that's specifically disallowed. That's why it's not happening. So, I don't know. Just food for thought, I guess. But right now we have a lot of Democrat Congress people that are calling. They're calling because they want to have a bill, a law, an act. They want a new rule. Now that I'm losing, new rule. We want to end gerrymandering across the country. We want government out of drawing districts. All of a sudden, how convenient. This is a good time. If you're a Democrat, now is a really, really good time to call for an end to partisan districting. I'd have to agree. when you are just absolutely getting it handed to you, that would be a good time to call for a ceasefire. Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. You see, Hakeem Jeffries has been calling for this. AOC, she had a pretty good hit. She had a little viral hit where she got to say this. And, there's been a number of them. J.B. Pritzker, Kathy Hochul. I think in Oregon, there was another one. In Maryland. Maryland was an interesting one because while their governor has been talking with Hakeem Jeffries, they're kind of planning and trying to angle for this redistricting thing. Because this is total war now. That's the exact words that Hakeem Jeffries used, total war. And he said he stands by those words. He stands by the phrase total war. And he's been talking to the Maryland governor. Maryland governor has been very, very, not mincing words. They're ready to redistrict too. Oh, that one Republican district has really got to go. And their state senator, their Speaker of State House, has actually said that they're not interested. They're not interested in redistricting. We saw the same thing in Indiana. And it actually does warm my heart a little bit, right? Because I've been saying on this show for months now, like redistricting is not like, I understand, like you see like, oh, we're winning. Look at our side, we're winning. But imagine like if actually there was kind of a period of time like this in baseball, where like the Yankees were so like unbelievably good compared to every other team that like there was almost like no reason to watch the Yankees anymore. There was never any drama. Like in a way, this is, I mean, in a way it's like this, but this is way worse. This is way worse because it's one thing like if your team's really, really good and you like, if you like watching the Harlem Globetrotters or you like watching the Savannah Bananas, like it's like, no, I kind of want my team to be like freaking awesome because then they do the behind the back catches and the backflips. But in this is real life. This is politics. So like seeing Trump do behind the back, that's all we're getting with the freaking AI generated meme videos of deportations and like airstrikes and the Lego renditions of like taking out terrorists in the Middle East. It's like, dude, no, that can actually make you tired of winning pretty quick. You want a relatively balanced system because if you have one party rule and there's no way, there's no threat to your leaders that they could be replaced, that a reasonable person could say, you know what, you've got a little too drunk on power and we need to reel this back. Single party rule inevitably ends in oligarchy because at a certain point your donors just start pushing more and more and more cash at you and you just say, well, screw it, what are they going to do, unelect me? Who are they going to vote for? You can't go anywhere else. So the whole conversation around Virginia has been like, oh well, you're disenfranchising all of the Republicans in the state. All of the Republicans, the state's 40% Republican, they just disenfranchised 40% of their voters. No. Redistricting disenfranchise every single one of the voters. That's the point. It's not an accident that we have gotten here. Like that we have, like people talk about the deep state and like, the perma government. They always have this plan and they're always trying to screw us. Like I'm telling you, if you redistrict across the country and every single state goes either solid red or solid blue, then like you just give it to the donors. It's just oligarchy after that. And you might think that, well, my oligarch's Elon Musk. How bad could it be? It's like, dude, okay, for one, it's way more than just one guy. And two, pretty effing bad. And yeah, exactly. Competition helps everyone. That's the free market of ideas. That's literally what it is. It's not about like, I'm going to debate people that want to kill me. Or like, we're going to shut down racism by just talking to these people and talking them out of being racist. And like, you can talk some of them out of it, sure, but like, that's not a requirement. You are allowed to just say, dude, you're an asshole. That is totally allowed. That's 100% allowed. You don't have to. That's called legitimizing something. Like, have you ever? I'm sure you've heard the phrase that you dignify something with argument. But there are things that you don't dignify with argument. You don't have to. I don't have to debate somebody on whether or not political violence is appropriate. I don't have to debate somebody on whether or not it's right to judge somebody only on the basis of the color of their skin. I'm not required to debate that. I can just tell them that I think that they're stupid. Like, and that's also that is an argument. It's totally allowed. Now, if you apply that too generously, like, oh well, Republicans, they just want to make districts to keep black people from being able to vote. It's like, well, okay, like that's not, like, on the one hand, it's tempting to say, well, I don't need to dignify that with argument. But then on the other hand, that's a really easy one to shut down. It's like, keep them from voting how? Like what? We slash the tires on their cars and put the precincts too far away. We build a moat with alligators around their communities, like that. Like no. Like nobody's stopping anybody from voting. You can't point to one single Republican congressman or one single Republican senator that is honestly engage, like that honestly wants to disenfranchise people on the basis of the color of their skin. You cannot find one. So this is not a real argument. Like, disenfranchise them to what? Because that's the whole point. Like, everyone's allowed to participate. You're not guaranteed an outcome. You're not guaranteed that your race gets to win. We have to set you up for victory in at least one district. That's not how it works. That's not ever how it was supposed to work. But if you want to end gerrymandering, if you want to take that out of politics everywhere, then by all means, you want to just make it all independent across the country. You first. No, I'm just kidding. The real answer is like, okay, so we end racial gerrymandering across the country. We end partisan gerrymandering across the country. We make it all independent commissions in all 50 states, independent commissions. Okay, well, say the Republicans pick up, 20 seats because of this change to VRA, right? They pick up 20, who knows, maybe 30, but they pick up 20 seats because of removing Section 2 of the Voters' Rights Act. And then you go across the country. It's all independent commissions. Well, what happens to California, where about 40% of the electorate's Republican? Because their districts certainly didn't look like Virginia's. What happens to the entirety of New England, where 40% of the voters are Republican, and there's not one Republican representative, not even one? Because you can say all you want, oh, well, we think partisan redistricting should end. We want to end it totally. Okay, well, there's a lot more pickup in your states than ours. So I'm guessing, right? This is my prediction. And things are moving very quickly, so I won't, this is like when you play Clue, you get to suspect a whole lot of times, and then at the end you finally accuse. This is one of my suspicions, right? By the time this whole Voters' Rights Act shakeup happens this year, we're going to see where the chips fall throughout the U.S. And I suspect that the new roadmap, the new rules, are going to create a lot of Republican districts. A lot. It's going to mean like a supermajority almost. And it'll probably get really shitty because we'll be in one-party rule for like a decade. And then regular voters will it'll really start to get ugly. Then you'll see by about 2032, maybe 2034, people really start to get serious about like, we need a constitutional amendment. We need to get the politicians out of district drawing. All independent commissions will find, we bring the people from Virginia 2020 back from the dead and we make them draw the districts in all 50 states. And then when it all shakes out, when you finally make it even again, by 2040 that amendment passes and you make it even again, the districts, the makeup's going to be almost the same. Because what Republicans are picking up now is only going to balance out what has happened in New England, what has happened in California, Washington, Oregon. So who knows, man? Maybe, just maybe, we're going to find out that the way that it was balanced, we had already figured it out. Who knows? Happy to be wrong. Happy to be wrong. And to be honest, if those districts are drawn based off of communities, then it's not the same type of permanent majority. Have a good night, Hams, if I didn't miss you already. But it is, if you were to algorithmically draw these districts based off of cities or towns or communities or geographical structures, economic influence, incentives, that sort of thing, factories. If you were to draw it in this way, then there actually is a chance that sentiment within a community could flip one way or another. And to be honest, if we did it that way, there would be a lot less of this incentive to participate in the party structure system. You could actually get a representative that actually represents your community, like directly, because like you're talking about, like, you vote for the mayor of Richmond and then you vote for the representative of Richmond, West Point, Toano, New Kent, like West Point, Toano, New Kent, King William, like that's like a district. And like these are people that live in a similar area. They're usually lean right, or some of them lean left, but in general they're a pretty moderate folk. And so, like, your representative you get is going to be a kind of a softball. Like, they're in the middle. They're in the middle on a lot of issues. You can get a lot of reasonable people there. And then that just also, the fact that I characterize my area that way should be no surprise at all, because almost everybody, when they look at their own community, they say, "Oh yeah, my community's pretty moderate," because these are the people you've sorted yourself into. I think that, at the 30-minute mark, that's a good enough place to leave it. So, anyway. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. We are on X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Rumble. All the lives are always posted to Rumble and YouTube. You can go back and check the archive. All the shorts are posted to TikTok and Rumble and Twitter and Instagram, and all the platforms get the shorts. I don't know what to tell you. But if you want to look at articles, you can find us on X or Facebook. If you want to talk with each other, share articles, ask me, can I dive into this? Hey, this is really important. Do you think that you could distill this story into a 90-second video? I'd be happy to do it. I'll take requests. I'll play whatever you want. But no, I'm always here for you guys. That's really what's important. It's about all of us debating, about us talking. We get stronger and we learn to argue our ideas better when we argue them together. And I am always here for you. You're not always here for me, but I am always here for you. But you don't have to feel bad. You can always make it up to me. All you have to do is hit that like or share button, or just tell your friends. They can find me, whatever platform they prefer. I'm probably there. And if you do all that, you don't have to feel bad anymore. We'll just call it even. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Good night.